The following program is a product of the students of Morphos Training for Television and Film, a project of the Mohammed Amin Foundation, supported in part by a grant from Foundation Open Society Institute and Open Society Initiative for East Africa. The views expressed in this program are not necessarily the views of the Mohammed Amin Foundation or Open Society Initiative for East Africa.
Tangu zamani haki zetu hatukujua, umefikia wakati wako nami kuchukua hatua. Haki na ukweli tumekuwa tukililia, wazee kwa vijana, chukua hatua, chukua hatua.
Show we're going to have for you today. Welcome. This is the Hatua Show. My name is Jimmy Gathu.
I am Ann Mitari Mumina. Welcome to the Hatua Show. The Hatua Show is about awareness, responsibility, and action.
That's right. It is where you and I take responsibility for the problems in the society and say they are ours, and we, only we, can solve them. You know, sometimes we take things for granted, like the air we breathe, like water.
Absolutely.
Like access to medical. There is a community in this country that knows exactly what that means. When we come back, a feature about the 43rd tribe in Kenya. Stay with us on the Hatua Show. We'll be right back.
Here.
Morphos Training for Television and Film, giving you the tools to tell your story.
Welcome back. The 43rd tribe is what this program is all about, the Nubians. And as you've heard from Anne, it's not about Kibera. It's a whole other issues as well. Absolutely. The feature we're about to show you will bring you closer to this discussion. Watch.
Hii maneno hata ikiwa itaenda kotini Afrika Mashariki iende bado tunadai tu haki yetu mpaka tupate.
Mimi nilisikia tu Wanubi wanakuwa frustrated kupata ID cards, kupata nini, wanakuwa frustrated.
Kama Wanubi wangelijua na mashamba, wakati watu wazungu wanapewa mashamba na wakati serikali ya Kenya inapeana mashamba, kwa nini hawaku complain?
Kama tumekubali kuishi nao Kibira na tumeishi nao miaka hizo zote, basi they're just part of the society.
Wanubi sio wa Kenya.
Ukishanyimwa ID utavote na nini? You can't vote. Huwezi vote. Unaambiwa ID yako ukalete great grandparents certificates of birth.
All other Kenyans only produce their parents' identity cards and their own personal birth certificates. Only.
Kumuitisha birth certificate ya babu yake ni sawa na kumwambia sikupi, nenda tu ukae upumzike badala ya kusumbuka.
I think the problem of the Nubian population in this country is not specific to the Nubians. I think it is very similar to the question of, for example, the Asians or the Kenyan whites, Arabs. You know, people perceived to have moved here from other places.
If you're a Nubian and you turn 18 and you go to the registrar of persons to get your identification card and you cannot get it, that means that you cannot get a job.
If you can't get your ID, obviously, you can't get your passport. If you can't get this documentation, you can't get your PIN number.
You won't be able to go to a clinic if you don't have your ID. You might not be able to attend university if you can't prove that you're Kenyan. You can't open a bank account in Kenya if you don't have an identification card.
If you can't get these three that I have mentioned, you are an non-entity. You don't exist.
It's not that all Nubians don't have citizenship, but many of them don't have citizenship. And it's not clear why they don't have citizenship.
Certainly these are people who have tried to do something about ventilating their rights. They know that they have lodged papers with the Registrar of Persons. They also know that they have been turned back many times. They know that. So what else were they supposed to do? The Nubians are aboriginals of the Sudan, the Nuba Mountains. The Nubians were conscripted into the British Army or the British war machinery, particularly for purposes of initially pacifying local communities.
They were press-ganged into the British Army, basically forced into the British Army.
They were then mobilized and stationed in certain specific places.
Before independence, all blacks were in the same basket. They were all treated as fourth-class citizen or whatever.
They were not included as citizens of Kenya when people were being granted citizenship.
Wametengeneza 42 tribes, alafu sisi Wanubi tunaweka others, yani mpaka sasa sisi tunaita others. Yani ni watu ambao sijui walitoka wapi, sijui binguni, hawana mahali.
The creation of Kibera was just intended to be a natural breeding ground so that a Nubian child would grow up in Kibera and be immediately absorbed into the army.
Kibra in Kinubi means forest, tropical forest type, where the sunlight, the rays of the sun cannot reach the floor of the forest.
The British government allocated them land in Kibera, but didn't actually give them a title deed, any kind of paperwork for that.
Kibra used to be 4,197.9 acres. The area between Langata Road, Ngong Road, the High Rise, and the Jamhuri Estate. The Nubians in those days had cattle, had their own farms. They used to get their food from the farm. They used to have houses where they would rent to people, and we used to get our money from there for education and everything. But after independence, the Kenya government decided to break all these houses. The idea was to strangulate people economically, which was perfected by the Kenya government.
They have been displaced like over 10 times to just pave way to one development or the other. And that displacement has been violent. It's been without notice. It's been without compensation.
There does need to be some sort of explicitness to this. I think, we need to deal with this issue as a country very openly.
What they desire is that what they currently occupy within Kibera would at the very minimum, be granted to them.
Perhaps the government has been working on a scheme to completely wipe out the existence of this community.
The fact that things are sensitive doesn't mean you don't address them. For me, in fact, you address them because they're sensitive, not because they're not.
I can't imagine being anywhere without having access to simple things like medical health, or being access to education or access to freedom.
Freedom of assembly.
Exactly. I can't imagine not being able to stand up and say, my name is Jimmy and I can say this and that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Our guest for today, what we normally call with Anne, the face of this discussion, is a gentleman who's a diversity officer with Semirade. Let's give a warm round of applause to Mr. Adam. Adam!
Starehe.
How are you?
I'm very fine indeed.
The question we're all asking, what is the Nubian question?
The Nubian question is the question of citizenship. The Nubian question is the question of access to participation, of access to resources. The Nubian question is the question of the most marginalized community that you can imagine of in this country.
Is it about Kibera? Because that's a whole confusion. Everyone says when the Nubians wakisimama kuongea, ukiona wamepiga kelele mahali ama they're on the roads, rioting. It's because they want Kibera. Is that it?
The question of Nubian is larger than Kibera itself, because Nubians are not only residents of Kibera, but by and large they have been scattered and settled in as many places as possible, as many districts as possible in this country.
Give us a scenario, Adam. I mean, Anne and I were just saying that we can't imagine, not for example, having a birth certificate, even though I am sure many of us haven't read the finer details, as we'll find out from Adam what your birth certificate says actually. But Adam, give us a scenario. What is it like?
Up to the age of 22, I didn't know that I was not supposed to be a Kenyan, or I didn't know that I'm not Kenyan.
You knew you were Kenyan?
I knew I was Kenyan.
Went to Kenyan school?
I went to Kenyan high school. I was in the university, in a Kenyan university, and by then, I received a call for a national duty to play for Kenya national team, rugby team. I was supposed to have a passport. There you are. And immediately, I lodged my papers. The first question I was asked, where are your grandparents' birth certificates, or if not, identity card? I told them my grandparents, one of my grandparents died before the Second World War. Where do I get that one? My grandmother, who had just died about 2 years before, I managed to produce the death certificate, but that wasn't enough. And I decided from then to withdraw my active participation in national assignment. The second time, I lodged for a passport while going to study in New Zealand. But because I didn't have a passport and I could not adequately convince anyone to give me one, it ended there.
For the benefit of the viewers, why couldn't you get this passport?
I did everything that I thought any normal Kenyan would do. But still, I was being asked to produce my grandfather's or my grandmother's birth certificate. In fact, this time they were not asking me for identity card, but they were asking me for birth certificates. When I said I didn't have, the officer in charge, and who I knew, it is someone I went with to school, told me, why don't you change your name, acquire a different identity? Call yourself anything, we'll give you this. That was not the end. In 1997, I'd been assigned to work in Somalia. The organization I was working for went through its lawyers, requested that I be granted a passport. It was denied. 2 years later, I had to resign from the job because I was not performing as I was supposed to. In the year 2000, I got 2 contracts. One to go and work as a volunteer in Honduras, and the second one to work in the Middle East. All approved by the Minister of Labor. And the Minister of Labor itself requested that I be granted a passport. The immigration officers allowed me for the first time to actually pay. I paid, but it took them a whole year until I lost the contract. I had to request a lawyer, a friend of mine, and when the lawyer wrote to the immigration department, what they did, instead of giving me a passport, they called me for a personal vetting exercise.
We have his friend, Korir. Korir, karibu sana on Hatua. Is there something legal that we don't know, constitutional that we don't know? Perhaps we need to know, Korir?
It's just one of those extremely sad issues, really. Like I said earlier, like Adam said, I mean, we were in the same school, for example. At no one time did I imagine that his membership to a particular community put him at a disadvantaged position, vis-a-vis myself. But when I met him 8 years later, after the university and stuff like that, I bumped on him in the streets, and he told me his story, and that was just shocking. I mean, I could not imagine that there is anybody in this country, a country that professes equality of all citizens, a country whose constitution specifically prescribes discrimination. I could not imagine that anybody could be subjected to that kind of treatment at this age and era. And so at the constitutional level, really, the Constitution is clear. When you read Section 89, for example, one, it says that anybody born in Kenya after 1963, one of whose parents is a Kenyan, is a citizen by descent. So the Constitution, in my view, is extremely clear and protects the Nubian children born after 1963. And so over time, then, we have engaged with the Kenyan government through a legal process to try to really establish, hey, what is the problem? Is it the Constitution? Is it the Citizenship Act? Is it the Registration of Persons Act? Wherein does the problem actually reside?
We're also joined in a studio by Mr. Maurice Odhiambo Makolo. Welcome. What are the international human rights dimensions to this?
I have known Adam for a long time. And until we started working on a certain project, a book that I was writing for the Minority Rights Group International, a copy of which I have, called Kenya, Minorities, Indigenous Peoples, and Ethnic Diversity, I didn't know he was Nubian. For all I care, he's not, he's a Kenyan. And why do I say that? Because this country is bound both by its national laws as well as international law. And among the international laws that this country is party to is, for instance, the Convention on the Rights of the Child that came into force in September of 1990. In Article 2, it is clear that all states shall take active steps to ensure the protection of the rights of the child from the moment the child is born onwards, including the right of that child to have a name, and the right, fundamentally, the right of that child to have a nationality.
Where is the disconnect?
In 1939, the Nubian community, after the demobilization from active service from the British Army, requested for repatriation back to Sudan. The British then said that could not take place because that would not be in the interests of Sudan, which was a ludicrous statement because at that time Sudan was under the colony of the British. The Maurice Carter Commission, the Land Commission of 1933, did indicate that they were given occupation of land. They were not given the title to it. They were meant to be tenants at the will of the crown. But fundamentally, it did find that there was both a moral, political, and legal obligation on behalf of the government to ensure the protection of the Nubian community. And I think the problem is that up to now, both the British government and the subsequent succeeding Kenyan governments have never had the moral mettle and as well as the political will to settle the Nubian question.
In fact, that's when we come back from the commercial, we'll talk about the land issue and, of course, whether it is political, administrative, political will, or perhaps a weakness in as far as administration is concerned. I highly doubt that. But we'll find out when we come back on the Hatua Show. Stay with us. Karibuni tena, hii ni Hatua Show where you and I take responsibilities for the problems that bedevil this country. We're speaking about the 43rd tribe, the Nubians. Now, of course, before this, you and I just thought it was all about Kibera. Well, apparently it's not. Our face for this discussion, Mr. Adam, Diversity Project Officer for Semi-Right.
We have in the studio Mr. Abdul Faraj. Mzee, karibu sana. The question that is on the hearts of many people is the land question. Tell us about that.
The Nubian question cannot be handled in this century. This is but the tail end of the Nubian question.
Has there been headway, though?
Absolutely.
That's all we need to know. Okay, that's all we need to know.
The Nubian question begins from the days of the Turco-Egyptian Sudan during the time of Amin Pasha. About 1822, that's when the Nubians moved south into East Africa.
Who are Kenyan brothers who are Nubians. Is that good? Yeah. That's good. Okay. Okay. Do they want these lands back?
In absolute categoric term, yes. We must also remember that almost every community in Kenya, the majority of them came from the Sudan. The Kalenjin came from the Sudan. We have people in the Sudan speaking virtual Kalenjin.
They have IDs and birth certificates.
Precisely.
And they own land and they have
Absolutely.
access. let me go to Mr. Ishmael Ramadan. Karibu sana. And they have two Ramadan. And in your view, is it political will that is lacking? Perhaps maybe hakuna computers za kutosha. Au makaratasi. What is it, Mr. Ramadan?
There was a question of interpretation of the Carter Commission report. Now, paragraph 601 of that report has been a subject of different interpretations by different regimes. And I believe it is that paragraph which is being used now to continuously label us as people who are more or less stateless. Now, in that particular paragraph, the question of Kibera, I keep coming back to Kibera because Kibera is the center for the Nubians in Kenya. It is by far the largest settlement in Kenya. And by virtue of it being in proximity to Nairobi, it gets additional status, additional value in terms of economics and so on. So everybody is scrambling for Kibera. So way back in 1933, when that report came out, the interpretation came out in 1960, September of 1960, by the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Housing. And the interpretation was that, yes, it is true, these people are at the will of the crown, but there's the recognition that they are part and parcel of the emerging Kenya nation. So the rider was, now that being so, then they must be entitled to land.
We need to take a short break. We're going to get a reaction from Mr. Adam and of course include Bwana Ali Huzia. Ali, karibu sana. Mr. Rashid Foley. Okay, we're going to get a view from basically people who can tell us more about the Nubian question. Of course, your comments and questions, because at the end of the day, it is what you and I must do. Right. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Hatua show. Before we went on break, Mr. Adam, you wanted to respond to what, and just add to what Mr. Ramadan was saying.
Actually, just to add on the question of settlement, is that other settlements where Nubians are, you had been granted temporary occupational license. Okay. That was way back before the Second World War. And to date, most of those settlements are still on those temporary occupational licenses.
Okay, we're tackling two issues here. There's the land question and the citizenship question. Yeah. The Constitution of Kenya provides that a person can apply for by registration if they've lived in Kenya for a certain duration. Yeah. Has the Nubian community taken up that option?
Having spoken to different lawyers, the technical answer, the technical implication is that you will be deregistered you'll actually become a citizen at the whim of the state. And therefore, anytime the state feels like you're a threat to it, just withdraw the citizen.
We've got Mzee Rashid and Mzee Ali. Welcome. Welcome to Hatua. As a person who's been here for so many years, what is the most painful thing in as far as this whole scenario is concerned, Bwana Rashid?
I want to talk about the regime, the past regime and the colonial regime. They have not been fair to the Nubian community. First, because at the time when our great-grandfathers served them, they served them because they were fighting for them. And they gave them a place without security of tenure. As a result of that, this is the problem that we are facing as at now. It is very painful because there is a place called Saragome, where I was born in during Kenyatta's time. That place, we were removed, and the place remained empty until the time of Moi regime. They've started selling that place.
Mzee Ali, maoni yako mzee wangu.
Ukilima shamba, mvua ikinyesha lazima utavuna. Ajabu, sisi kama community ya Wanubi tunapigania uhuru ya nchi hii. Wengine wameteswa, wengine wamekufa, wameuawa. Tulikuwa tunapigania uhuru ya Mwafrika. Hakuna 42 tribes. No, tulikuwa tunapigania, tunataka uhuru ya Mwafrika. Na kweli tumefaulu. Tumepata uhuru mpaka tukatawala, lakini kitu ambacho sisi Wanubi mpaka sasa tunasikitika, hii 42 tribes imetoka wapi?
I'm Zainab Talib. I was born 45 years ago, and I was born in a beautiful village called Lomle. The village is no longer there. It is now called Ayani Estate. We were 7 in the family, and in 1977, the same thing happened like Mr. Yassin said. We were evicted out of that without even notice, and we found ourselves moved to another village. We had to move to a village called Mashimoni, of which it was not the right place. We didn't like that place, but we had to move there. And we stayed there for some time, and life became so difficult. And out of about 60 rooms that we had, we were only given 2 houses that we are having until today.
We did invite the government to come and give their views and what they are doing as far as this question is concerned. We believe that they wanted to come and they were unable to. So that's how we're going to keep it. That's how we're going to keep it, right? Okay. But if they were here, Mami, what would that one question be for you, to them?
I would say let them. They say that there is human rights. The Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, are they really taking care of that? Are they really taking care of our problems? Do they really think that we are supposed to be on this earth, or they want to wipe us out of this earth?
Ayan Estate used to be, what?
Yes, it's a fact.
What do you think?
I'm Abdurazak Mohammed. I think this problem is not only with the Nubians. If I may tell you the truth, is among from the northeastern part, it is the same. And I can tell you the truth is that someone, when he has to get an ID or a passport, he either has to pass what you call a vetting, which might take up to 2 years before you get an ID. That's a fact that you can really go to the NSSF. They delay for the ID, and as we know about the rights, delay is all about denial, and that's a fun fact that they are doing. And basically what they are doing is, like right now, Northeastern Province, or if we say up to the Marsabit, the government is not getting anything tangible, maybe, and then they are saying like that people are bandits, and that's why maybe they are not giving their legal right or the constitutional right.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Hatua, and will take us to the crossroads where, you know what, you and I have got to come up with the solutions. And if you can't, let's ask the people here to help us. Stay here.
Welcome back. It's at this point on the Hatua show that we walk to the crossroads. At the crossroads, we find 3 roads: the road of awareness, responsibility, and action. So it's at the Hatua crossroads where we come up with solutions that start with I can. What can Ann do? What can Jimmy do? What can Adam do? We're going to take solutions from us and see what can we do in our individual capacities with what we've got to make a difference on this question.
I'm going to ask Adam, and you've been there. I have my ID, I have my passport. It was very easy to get. For you, it was different. So what can I do?
We are trying to create an awareness that the whole nation and everyone in this country to begin appreciating what we are going through. I believe that each and every Kenyan must take up their responsibility to amplify this issue. The issue of nationality, the question of discrimination and denial of land and rights, so that we begin to ask our government to set up proper policies that will address most of these issues. Right. One, the question of who is a Kenyan, vis-a-vis how does that relate to what you own and what kind of property you should have, should be addressed by all. So that if, for instance, vetting is supposed to be a requirement for anyone to become a Kenyan, to acquire any nationality documents, then it should be done across the board. Let it not be skewed to target Nubians in Nairobi and Somalis at the border, but it should be across the board. Let there be, for instance, a Meru born in Turkana is never vetted, but a Turkana born, for instance, in Nairobi will be vetted. Those kind of things should be just wiped out once and for all.
Your name, ma'am, and what is your Hatua?
My name is Audrey. I'm just shocked that we haven't learned as recently as '94 in Rwanda that we're still putting people in ghettos, those who are unwanted, first for example, like the Jews and the Gypsies, and over a lot of nonsense. There are also other races. These are also Africans, like the indigenous people of Kenya. Why this strange racism, can't think of a stronger word, discrimination?
Okay, so you, sir.
My name is Ahmed Yusuf. I think that all the youth and the wazis should gather up and mobilize on how best we can do to talk to the government to give us our rights.
That's right, good one, yes. Your name?
My name is Teddy Tinga, and what I can say is I think it's the high time we should revise the history curriculum for the primary and secondary and add the Nubian as the 45.
Tell us your name, sir, na ile hatua utachukua mzee wangu.
I think that the Nubians have been talking to the government for the last 40 years, and the British before them. We are all young people here, and I think we should take a stand. Everyone get a voter's card. We tell them, look, if you're not going to address this, we're throwing you out.
That's a good thing, good one.
My name is Ken from the National Youth Parliament. Mine is a question. Is it possible for us to launch a petition where like 10 million Kenyans sign a petition that Nubians should be given their citizenship?
I am extremely delighted that such suggestions are coming up, because one of the hatuas that I was going to mention is the fact that under our international obligations given under the treaties, even the civil society organizations comment or write shadow reports. Two, we have a donor community here that keeps bashing the government on certain aspects of human rights. Why selective? Why don't they also treat the Nubian question, especially the citizenship?
Your name, sir, and what your Hatua is?
This is Isaiah M. Thomas. I think it's the time we put the issues the way they are. It's not about recognizing the Nubian people. I think we already do that. It's about the sort of discrimination, some sort of neo-apartheid.
Wow, that's powerful.
Wazee, tunaweza kuchukua hatua gani?
First, I want to revisit the issue of vetting. It is very unfortunate because we have the Samias, and the Samias who are living in Busia, one of them is a minister or a member of parliament in Uganda, and it happens to be brother of Uncle Mudi Aori. Why are they not being vetted?
Yeah. Nataka utueleze sisi kama vijana, kama vile mwenzangu pale amesema ya kwamba umezungumza na serikali ya Kenya miaka 40 na wazungu mbele hapo. Sasa sisi kama vijana tutafanya nini ili tuhakikisha kwamba hii swala la Nubians itekelezwe once and for all?
Mimi binafsi kwanza niseme yangu binafsi. Mimi niko 72 years sasa. ID yangu ilipotea 1904. Mpaka leo naambiwa hata niende kwa vetting. Mimi kweli niende kwa, mimi nasema sitaenda na kila nitashikwa nipelekwe jela. Sitaenda kwa sababu gani mimi nakuwa nafanywa vetting? Why?
Sisi vijana sisi wengine tutafanya nini mzee wangu?
Ikiwa mbele haijakuwa sawa, nyinyi nyuma ndio mtakuwa sawa. Mbele kwanza ifanywe alafu ndio nyuma itakuja.
Can I engage my member of parliament even if a young man, as my colleague has said there, if 2007 happens and the same guys get into parliament, how can we engage our members of parliament, irrespective of whoever they are? How can you do that?
Allow me to begin by rephrasing the words of our revered brother, Reverend Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere." Let me rephrase that by saying that injustice to anyone is injustice to everyone. Yeah. It is time every citizen of this country realized that injustice to the Nubians is injustice to every citizen of this country. And I think maybe also with the benefit of hindsight, we still have some remnants of constitutional questions to deal with. Section 87 and 88 of the current constitution, the one we have, defined the citizenship question from who was present when the country was born. The constitution that we are talking about now, I think it must revisit the citizenship question with a view to saying that, finding out that all discrimination that has taken place in this country, be it for the Nubians, be it for people in Moyale, because I've also been to Moyale and Marsabit, and I've seen people being taken to court because they're being charged like you're from Ethiopia or something like that. And then they say, no, I'm not, I'm a Kenyan. Then they say, prove it, show us your ID. I think this is a matter that must also be given a constitutional belonging.
I want us to hold hands now. I want us to hold hands. All of us have decided we'll chukua hatua. Tushikane mikono basi. And on the count of 3, raise them up high and say, tachukua hatua!
That's yet another exciting show of Hatua, where we've been able to just thrash out the different issues that have come up on the question. We meet at the crossroads and know that there is always something that you can do. Write to us. We have our addresses at the end of the show. Tell us how you can take Hatua, right, how you can take action.
Until next time, take care of yourself na kumbuka. Panda ngazi, pana wishi kwa magorofa bana. Have a nice one.
Tangu zamani haki zetu hatukujua, umefikia wakati wako nami kuchukua hatua. Haki na ukweli tumekuwa tukililia, wazee kwa vijana, chukua hatua, chukua hatua. Ewe mzalendo,
If you want to be a student at the Morphos Training for Television and Film, apply now. Telephone 020-4349-280. Email morpho2@iconnect.co.ke or download an application form at www.morphos.com.